There's a lot of words, a lot of hot air this week, but my hot tip for anyone paying attention, when a politician speaks, pay attention to the bits they're not saying. So when we hear no new or increased taxes, compare that with an extra $60 million on compliance and debt recovery in this budget. That is collecting fines, usually from people who would struggle the most to pay them. In these budget papers, it reveals those extra $60 million, and no doubt that's because we've seen this government expand drug offences and introduced restrictions on legal pedal assist e-bikes, among more nonsense, kind of tough on crime. But here's the real kicker, Deputy Speaker. The budget says, in as many words, broader population growth has expanded the client base. So that's budget speak for more Queenslanders means more fines to collect. So no new taxes maybe sounds great to some people until you realise that regular Queenslanders are still footing the bill because they're having more fines than this kind of, brazen revenue raising ripped straight from their pockets. And all of that...
Members, there's a fair bit of audible noise in the chamber. Keep your conversations to a minimum, please. Member for Mawa.
This remains necessary, Deputy Speaker, because others aren't paying. And I'll give just one example. I'll get to others later, like the developers and the big banks. I've said this countless times, but I will keep banging on about it. Both major parties just refuse to tax big gas corporations properly. Now, Queenslanders, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's clear in this year's budget papers, we are paying heaps more in vehicle registration in Queensland than the big gas corporations are paying in royalties. The numbers are $2.5 billion from ordinary Queenslanders in registration last year as compared to $1.1 billion in gas royalties, more than twice as much. Now, it should be, in my mind, straightforward. Raise gas royalties to 35%, make a fair share for Queenslanders so that they can actually pay for the things that we keep hearing we can't afford in budgets like this. There's no money for genuine cost of living relief, we're told. An extra $50 per child on schools. Great.
Thank you.
We can't afford genuine cost of living relief, but it's not like there isn't money in the budget in Queensland. It's all just going to the banks and the big developers and, don't miss this, the big fossil fuel companies, not to ordinary Queenslanders. So this year, there is around, on my numbers, $615 million or more of taxpayer money on fossil fuels through our state-owned power companies. That includes over $520 million that this government's choosing to spend propping up ageing coal-fired power stations. And our supposed clean energy company, the state-owned CleanCo, is spending almost $40 million on gas, that most clean, renewable of energy sources. And my tongue is firmly planted in my cheek, Deputy Speaker. This government's actions constitute effectively a breach of our legislated emissions reduction targets. But don't worry, your power bills will be cheaper, we keep hearing, right? That's what they claim. Well, not quite. The Australian Energy Regulator has been absolutely clear that renewables are driving lower wholesale energy prices. Now, that's clear on any sensible analysis. This government is quick to claim lower power prices as a win, and yet I don't know how many people will still be confused about why their power bills are still going up. Well, it's really simple. The one-word answer is privatisation. So Labor, now 20 years ago, in 2006, privatised electricity retail in Queensland. So the only remaining publicly owned electricity retailer in Queensland is Ergon, which serves regional customers. They're getting cheaper power because the government can direct retailers to pass on wholesale savings. But for the vast majority of Queenslanders, about 2/3, especially if you're in South East Queensland, you're missing out on cheaper energy because the government privatised retail. And these private retailers will always charge more to cover advertising costs.
Order, members.
Their massive CEO bonuses, and of course, they're going to want to turn a profit on Queensland's essential services.
Just pause the clock for a moment. Just Mem for Mayo, pause from members. Too many people talking and standing around. If you're leaving, go. Otherwise, keep your conversations to a minimum, please. Member for Maiwar.
Thank you. It's time for the government and for the Premier to stop with this faux concern in the naming and shaming approach with these energy retailers that are ripping us off. It's time to cancel their licences, to bring the full electricity system back under public ownership and invest in renewables. That is the way to deliver cheaper bills for Queenslanders. And ultimately, the Greens believe that essential services should be publicly owned. Private companies should not be profiting off our essential services. But clearly, that isn't a view that this government shares. That should apply equally to public transport. This budget could have included funding to buy back the air train. I've heard, much revelry at the introduction of 50-cent fares in Townsville and Cairns, but instead, here in Brisbane, we are letting a private foreign-owned corporation hold Brisbane's airport train to ransom until 2036. Now, this month, I revealed financial statements that value the air train at just $45 million. For comparison, Deputy Speaker, a single road upgrade in my electorate, the Indooroopilly roundabout, cost $257 million, more than 5 times the amount. Now, if AirTrain won't sell for a fair price, then the government clearly has the power to legislate to force them to do it, to buy it back, make it public, make the fares 50 cents, and build new stations, make the trains run more frequently. All of these things are possible, but not until they take on the profiteering corporate owner of AirTrain. Deputy Speaker, turning to local issues, this won't take much time because this government has completely dudded Maiwar. We've seen nothing. Obviously, they're disappointed about the air train, but they're also disappointed that there's nothing around dedicated bus lanes or transit lanes on the west side. I invite the Transport Minister to try taking the bus on the Centenary motorway during peak hour, and I'd like to see him tell me that we don't need that. There is nothing at all for new buildings at Indooroopilly State High School. We've got an infrastructure designation that accepts that we need 4 major infrastructure projects, and yet there's not a cent to be spent on those in this budget. We're still seeing this government proceed on the absurd idea that somehow student numbers at Indo State High are going to drop. They've got this bogus modelling, and the plan, the infrastructure plan, is for a 2,500 student population when we're already pushing 3,000 students. We've got demountables on the oval, kids without specialist classrooms. It's farcical, and it's a blight on residents in my area that their kids aren't getting the facilities and the teachers aren't getting the facilities they need to do their job. Despite the new laws around, the e-bike safety, there are no new bikeways in my electorate, so people are just left having to ride on the road. So, Deputy Speaker, there's never enough money for public transport or to properly fund state schools or to build public housing, but it's clear that there is money to spend. For example, a $200 million taxpayer-funded handout to the racing industry, including new greyhound racing track at Bundaberg. Now, the last one that was funded at Ipswich has killed dozens of dogs, despite claims that it's got the highest safety standards of anywhere. Hospitals clearly need more funding. One of the biggest hospital spends, one of the biggest investments of public money is in a private hospital at Springfield that doesn't even provide reproductive health care services. So we're pouring all this money into Mater Springfield while they turn women away who need abortion or reproductive or miscarriage care. There's more than $2.5 billion in the budget for adult and youth prisons this year, including $250 million building and expanding youth prisons. Now, before they start banging on about how it's keeping everyone safe, these budget papers also reveal 53% of adult prisoners are returning to prison within 2 years. 71% of youth offenders are charged again within 1 year of an offence being finalised. Well, is it any surprise that we heard from the Attorney-General this morning that they need an extra $10 million on criminal prosecution services across the state, focusing on regional areas specifically, she noted. And still, beyond the question time question on Tuesday, we still have no idea how much this government is spending on briefing a leading silk to maintain suppression orders to suppress the identity of this high-profile public figure in Queensland. Maybe it's a question for the police minister. Maybe he could enlighten us. How much is being spent to maintain suppression orders protecting the identity of a high-profile Queensland man? Now, I'm certainly not going to say anything in here that might contravene those orders. To be perfectly frank, Deputy Speaker, I don't think most people in Queensland really care about, you know, the promiscuity or infidelity or philandering of whoever this high-profile man is. But we do care about the use of public funds to keep up a gag order in very, very unusual circumstances. Now, I'll move on, Deputy Speaker. We had some excellent question time pantomime this morning from the Premier who said delivering is exhausting, and absolutely, they are exhausting themselves delivering new jails and filling new jails by criminalising kids, by locking up anyone who dares to breathe those forbidden 6 words in support of a free Palestine. They're finding all manner of creative new ways to spend QPS resources, to waste QPS resources, like their e-mobility, you know, fining kids and breathalyzing people on bikes. Meanwhile, public perceptions of police integrity has become a discontinued measure under this budget. People's confidence to report domestic violence to police are at a record low, which is no wonder when you see stories like this week about a suspended officer being released on bail for a string of offences, including stalking. Perceptions of police honesty and fairness are consistently below targets, and the government's response to that, the government's answer is to just stop asking, stop measuring how low people's confidence is. And it's no surprise when we still have no independent police integrity unit. Labor and the LNP have both failed to implement the Commission of Inquiry's recommendations. We've got cops investigating cops, which is just a recipe for corruption, abuse of power and low faith in the integrity of our policing system in Queensland. Now, of course, this is the first budget since the LNP lifted its ban on developer donations, and man, it is delivering serious returns for those developers. Now, when they talk about housing, don't be fooled by the spin. The billions in so-called activation funds aren't money for housing, that's money for developers. The infrastructure that developers should be funding to just pad their margins out even further. Another year of boost to buy and demand side grants that are just boosting the cost of buying a home. Brisbane prices are up more than 20% in 1 year. Great for investors, absolutely horrific for renters and first home buyers. We have solutions, but neither major party is willing to take on the big banks or the property investors. We could cap rent increases. The Greens have introduced a bill to do that, but the majors rejected it. We can tax vacant homes and land. Again, we introduced a bill, they rejected it. We could have a publicly owned developer to build more homes. Instead, this government is selling off public land and it's removing affordability requirements. Speaker, in looking at this budget, I nearly fell into the trap of just going down the line of what a boring budget. But we can't let ourselves be taken down that road because this stuff is important and because, Deputy Speaker, that's what they want from us, to somehow frame inaction or so-called stability as a virtue. We can't let them get away with that because we can't allow Queenslanders to settle for scraps. Better things are possible, but this government wants us to expect nothing. They want us to expect that they can't help us while gas corporations get rich on our resources, while power companies continue to charge like wounded bulls on our monthly power bills, while developers get tax handouts to make money from the housing crisis. Now, we have put forward, as a party, countless options to address this. What would a Greens budget look like in Queensland? Well, here's 3 simple examples. We could tax the gas corporations, as I said. We could afford more than scraps if we just took a fair share for our resources.
Order, members.
Programs like free school breakfasts, free psychology sessions, no more out-of-pocket costs for schools. We could end privatisation and start reversing it by bringing electricity retail back into public hands and investing in cheap renewables. We could take on the property and banking industries, genuinely tackle the housing crisis, tax vacant land and houses, levy the big banks. Now, these things take courage, Deputy Speaker. It takes courage to challenge corporate power and profit and to do things differently. The major parties lack the courage we need, and it will be their undoing because people can only take so much.
Mr. Acting
Thank you.
Speaker.